Hey guys, it's Melissa, and it was really aggressive. Hi, it's Melissa, and welcome back to my channel. I've had way too much caffeine today. Okay, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna remain calm. So, I'm gonna call this series, thank you guys so much, by the way. I reached out to you guys and asked you, like, hey, what's an idea for a Halloween theme? Because, like, I'm old and have no ideas. Anyways, you guys are awesome. You gave me some great ideas and kind of got me to where I needed to be. So, we're gonna call this series True Halloween History. Very creative from True Crime History. The other idea, which I really love, instead of saying, hi, my name's Melissa. If you're new here, my name is Melissa Hallowellen. Cute, right? Okay, we love it. Anyways, thank you guys so much for being here. Seriously, I can't thank you guys for all your love and support and just being here and showing up and knowing what this channel is about. And it's about raising awareness for missing people. So that is what we're going to kind of focus on during Halloween. I found a blog and I'm going to actually use the cases from it. So I'm going to link it below now so you guys can see the cases that I'm going to be covering this month. And do me a favor, if you guys know anything about the case, drop me a comment, send me an email, whatever you need to do. I really appreciate you guys because you guys find things out there. Everyone always wants people to cover cases that are unknown and they're hard to find. And I can't, anyways, you know what I mean? And when you guys suggest them to me, it really just gets them in front of me and I really appreciate it. Let me tell you a little bit about today's story. So picture this, you're a mom, you get your little buggy and you put your almost 3-year-old and your 7-month-old into the buggy and you take off to the grocery store and you leave them outside while you go in the grocery store. Yeah. And then, lo and behold, your almost 3-year-old is taken. I know. Right? Go ahead and get your yelling out. Why do I always find these cases? This is what I focus on, like these crazy ones where you're like, what in the world were you thinking? But this is real life. And by the time we're done, you're going to think, oh, okay. I know you don't think right now you're ever going to think that it's okay to leave your child outside. Just so you know, it's not. But let me explain to you when we get into the story of Stephen Damman. So let's jump into the video. Before we talk about this week's video, I always like to talk about last week's video. Just a couple days ago, I put up a story about Selena Mays. And I want to make sure I'm sharing her photo again for you guys. This is a true example of a story that got absolutely no coverage, salacious as can be, dramatic, all the drama. She was 12, she was pregnant, she went missing, and no coverage. And I was happy to feature her on my channel, and I cannot wait until you guys keep sending me these cases I can cover, and my channel is big enough that we can make a difference on these cases that are so small. And I never thought that was going to happen, and you guys are making it happen, and I just love you for it. So, all right, that was last week's video. Let's talk about this week's video. I'm going to tell you the story of Stephen Craig Damman. He would actually be 64 years old now. Stephen was often called Stevie, and Stephen was born December 15th of 1952. Now, he went missing on Halloween, October 31st of 1955. So he was just 2 months short of turning 3. So 2-year-old little Stevie goes missing in 1955 and has never, ever been found. Let me tell you what he was wearing, so to make sure we cover that. He was actually wearing blue overalls, often referred to as dungarees. He was wearing a blue polo shirt, and he also had a red sweater that had blue and white ships on it, and he was wearing brown boots. I always make sure I put this information in here. You guys know about the Doe Network and the work that they have done to identify people. There are so many unidentified remains out there. And so these are kind of how these come together, especially if somebody is taken in another country or on the other side of the US and they're transported to the other side of the US. How are they going to put that together? And it's often by these little things, like a red sweater with ships on it might be something that might last and they might be able to identify. So I want to make sure I include that. At the time of his disappearance, he was just over 3 foot tall at 3'2", and he was about 32 pounds. He was blonde-haired, blue-eyed. He had a scar under his chin. On the back of his left calf, he had a birthmark mole, and he also had a healed fracture in his left arm. So as I mentioned, little Stephen had a sister. Her name was Pamela, and at the time of his disappearance, she was 7 months old. Now, the mother and father are going to be Jerry and Marilyn Damman. Now, they are originally from Iowa, And they had actually just transferred just that year to New Jersey. Mr. Damman was actually stationed in the Air Force there. He was a Continental Air Commander Sergeant in the U.S. Air Force. So at this time, they're new in the area. It's Halloween. I believe Mr. Damman, Jerry, is at work, and Marilyn, the mother, Mrs. Damman, is at home with the children. She decides to put them into the buggy. I say buggy because I think it's important to know that we're talking about a buggy, a carriage. These were not our cute little compact little strollers that we have now that can fold up. And man, they have one now that converts all the way into a carrier that goes into the car. My goodness. I was impressed when they got the carriers to start with. Okay, so this is not one of these like nice compact strollers. We are talking a buggy. All right, so she loads the two children up into the buggy and they take a 1.5 block walk to the local, I've seen bakery, I've seen bread store, I've seen grocery store, but we are talking a small front store. So she walks with the children and they get to the store. Now here's the part that's going to shock you, and I need you to understand something, okay? This was normal in 1955. Rather than take, because these were big old buggies, into the store and try and get it around, it was common to leave the infant children outside in the stroller. I know, you're like, no way, no. I had to do a little research, I had to look it up, I had to call some people, I had to talk to some family, and yeah, I guess this was normal. There are two reasons why this was so common. Number one, they could see from the store. There was usually big windows, but that wasn't the biggest thing, okay? The biggest reason why people did this is because lack of knowledge, okay? You didn't have the news running like it does now. You didn't have the internet. You didn't have cell phones. Your information about what was happening in the world was so limited, okay? People didn't know about the evils. They didn't know about serial killers yet. They didn't know that there were people in the darks of the night that took children. You know, when they would hear of something happening, it was so far away and it was a story to them almost. The news was just new. It was still featuring, you know, what was going on in the world and things like that. And so missing children just wasn't important yet. I know, whoever would have a million years think it wasn't important. It just wasn't the same. It was important. It just wasn't the same. The way that they would put the pictures out there and the way they would tell their stories, it just wasn't happening. You had these small news segments and you had to get that information in quickly. So a missing child was just, oh, there was a missing child taken. And that was it. So moms weren't scared all the time. They weren't realizing that this could happen in their neck of the woods, okay? So not to excuse her decision to leave them outside, she had a lot of guilt over this decision, a lot. It wrecked her. It tore her apart from everything I've read, but she did. She made the decision and she left them outside. So she's in the store for about 10 minutes and she comes outside and she sees that the stroller with Stephen and Pamela is gone. And to her, she's completely bewildered because she can't imagine, where did they go? Thinking, okay, maybe Stevie got out, pushed the stroller. That was the confusing thing. Some people said he was in the stroller. Some people said he was out. But I really, from the original news article that I read, he was inside of the stroller. But maybe she thought he got out and tried to take little Pamela on a walk. She's looking for her child and she can't find him. Now, two different ways this was said is that the stroller was eventually found several blocks away with Pamela inside, but the original news article, which seems to be more on point and made a little bit more sense and answered some questions, says that she was actually found in the stroller right behind the store. And directly in this article, it addresses one of the theories that gets brought up a lot, where people thought that maybe Stephen decided to try and take her on a walk and kind of walk her around, and that maybe he then got lost and wandered off and got harmed. Number one, he was never located in any searches. So that, I mean, how far is an almost 3-year-old going to get? Number two, it says right in the article that police ruled that out and said that there was not a chance that this child could have pushed this buggy through the terrain, through the traffic. I think it said even buck through traffic. Wording was so different then. For him to get back to this behind the store, that this was impossible. These handles on these buggies were really tall back then and very big, very heavy. They had a brake system that was different. So it doesn't appear that that's a possibility. It more appears that somebody came up and pushed that stroller, and then somebody made the decision to only take Stephen. Stephen was almost 3 and a boy. Most people feel that if somebody was going to kidnap a child, they would have taken the 7-month-old baby girl. But nobody knows the reasoning, but Stephen was gone and Pamela was not. The grocery store, by the way, we're in Long Island, New York. I forgot to say that they are at a little bakery bread store or something in Long Island, New York when this happened in 1955. Now, a massive, massive search was done to try and find Stephen. Thousands of people were out searching. Hundreds of people from the Air Force Base that worked with Mr. Damman came out and got involved in the search. They were trying desperately to find this little boy. They covered massive amounts of ground and did everything they could to try and find him, including going door to door from houses, looking in ditches, everything they could think of to see where he could have possibly wandered off to. Mr. Damman even went on TV. Jerry went and spoke and just talked to the news and told them, whoever took my child, please just bring him back. Please bring Stevie back. We will forgive you. Just bring him back. They were desperate for him to be brought home. Within the month, so in late November of 1955, they did get a little bit of hope. It was a hoax. I don't like to drag this one out. It was a hoax. There was a college student attending Queens College in New York City, and he had seen the news that had been running for Stephen, and he had saw a little bit about the fact that he was anemic. He needed some things, and he thought that these parents would have money and that he could get something out of it. And he did. He sent them letters demanding money. Originally, it was $3,000, then it was $10,000, then it was $14,000, which we know now is a lot more money. And yeah, it was just a get-rich scheme. He told them that he would take this money in exchange for the welcome home of their son. And yeah, it turned out to be just some jackass pulling a hoax on these desperately pleading parents for their child. And unfortunately, this still happens to this day. I even get weird ass emails from people claiming that they have somebody. I forward everything. It goes straight to the police. I've never heard back on anything, but I always forward it on. I want nothing to do with it. I tell anyone, if you have any information, you contact the police. And if I get anything creepy, it goes to the police department. As I mentioned, Marilyn was just beat herself up. She felt extreme guilt over what had happened. Jerry ended up leaving the Air Force just a couple months later, and which meant that once he left the Air Force, the family actually ended up moving back to Iowa, which bothered me. I gotta be honest. I don't know how to say it any other way. It bothered me. I would never leave the house where my child was last at. Would never leave the city. But I guess in this situation, they want to get home to family. They want to be there. They want to be around their loved ones, where they're from, and they don't know anyone really there other than the Air Force. So I guess for them it made sense, but it bothered me desperately. They ended up divorcing, I think 2 years later. Jerry did go on to remarry. Eventually, Marilyn did end up moving to Missouri. I have a lot of questions. Now, in that situation, okay, because there were some theories that came out that people were wondering, was Stevie ever actually missing? Did something happen inside of the home? Is that why the parents ended up moving so quickly? Is that why the parents ended up divorcing immediately? There's a lot of questions, but I will tell you this. In the divorce proceedings, in regards to Pamela, the baby, Marilyn, the mother, did have custody of her. So I just imagine if Jerry thought that Marilyn had done something, I can't imagine he would have let Pamela go with her. I don't know, a lot of questions about that, and I just don't ever want to throw those accusations, because these families have continued to come forward. They've continued to be interviewed, continue to talk about their story, and continue to try to find Stephen. Unlike some of our other stories, just last week with Selena Mays, you can't even find her family looking for her, and it's only been since 1996. This is from 1955, and they're still looking for their son. So kind of makes you wonder. It's a little different and weird, and I don't know. There was at one point in time, somebody put up a YouTube video, which is no longer up. So I'm totally going to say this is just gossip. But it was supposedly a neighbor who said that Marilyn was abusive. And then people brought up the fact that he had the broken arm at one point, and then thought that maybe she did something. I'm just saying, it just sounds like total gossip at this point. I didn't see anything supported in the news articles, anything coming from the Air Force that was involved, anything coming from the detectives that were involved, or from Jerry to say that in any way did anyone suspect that Marilyn would have done anything to Stephen. And Pamela was raised with her. So something would have come about to say, like, hey, I could have been my mom. Nobody has come forward to say that, other than the gossip in the comments, just speculating, trying to figure out if it was an option. Because, of course, we all thought it was maybe an option. It did make me wonder. I tried to dig and find any articles talking about was Stephen actually seen that day? Who saw them? When should we go in the store? But I didn't see anything like that. And I just don't think that they did those kind of expose interviews back then. So I wasn't able to find anything about what was happening that day or what could be verified about their trip to the store. The one thing I did also see in regards to how they felt about Stephen. So they have continued to search for him and they've continued to do some interviews. There have been some things that have happened over the years that I'm going to tell you about in a minute. But I will say that Pamela's son was interviewed and he said that he knew very little about Stephen, that Marilyn, his grandmother, the mother of Stephen, had only spoke of him once when he was a little boy and told him the story of what happened, and that he always knew not to talk about it. It was just a heartbreaking story for them. They didn't want to talk about Stephen, that it was just really hard to deal with. I guess that could happen after so many years. By the time this child was born, it's 20, 30 years later. And it's just hard. How do you keep talking about something that just breaks you? Now, there was a theory that did come forward, the boy in the box. I'm not going to go too far into this because I think I will eventually cover this story on my channel. I cannot believe it's still not solved. There's a boy that was found in a box in 1957 in Pennsylvania. And the theories I think that they figured out who it is, and I can't believe, anyways, we're not going to go into that. So there's a boy that was found in a box. He was around the same size. He was the same hair color, same eye color. He had a scar under his chin, and they really got hopeful that it might have been Stephen. Not hopeful that means Stephen's not with us anymore, but at least they could have the answers. Where is my child? What happened to him? They ended up comparing the footprint of Stephen that was taken at birth with the footprint of the boy in the box. It did not match. Just to be sure, though, in 2003, once DNA testing had advanced, they actually did compare the DNA from Pamela, the sister, to the boy in the box, and they did not match, ruling out that Stephen was not the boy in the box. To make sure, because a lot of people really thought that test was wrong and that was Stephen, but it was not Stephen Damman in the box. Now, in 2009, the story of Stephen Damman really hit the news. There was a man by the name of John Barnes from Michigan, and I don't want to get... I don't know about this guy. I gotta be honest. I've seen other people cover it and I don't believe him. Am I just way too skeptical? I do not believe him. I don't know why. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, John Barnes. For whatever you're thinking, I just don't think... Okay. This man said that he had always felt different than his family. A lot of people have gone through this. He felt like he didn't look like his siblings. Totally understand this feeling. I mean, I don't understand, but I know other people have. So he just felt like he didn't fit in. Now, he said that when his mother passed away, she was passing on hospice, it appears, and was under a lot of medication, and she couldn't quite speak. I remember going through that with my mom. The things that people say at end of life are, the stories you hear are true. They say things that are just out there. And according to him, his mother said something that made him think that she was trying to say that she wasn't his mother, and that something, he couldn't quite figure out what she was trying to say. And so he said that led him to go onto some databases of missing people, and he came across Stephen Damman, and he really, really felt that he was Stephen Damman. So he went to the Damman family home. I think he found Jerry on his new wife, talked to the wife, then ended up going to the police department, and then ended up writing a letter to the sister Pamela, and that's how they kind of got together. Now, this man did have some similarities. There's a ton of research. There were so many documentaries that were done on this, comparing him with his childhood photos and all of this. And I was really like, oh, and I felt really bad until this made me uncomfortable. So they did a DNA test, and he's not Stephen Damman. He's not. But he still thinks he is. Yeah, he says the DNA is wrong. He thinks he's Stephen Damman. His father, the Michigan man, spoke on the news and was like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm John Barnes' father. I've always been his father. I have no idea what he's talking about. This is outlandish. He said a long time ago he didn't think he looked like his siblings, but I thought this was like, no, there's not a chance in the world. That is my child. That's my son. I raised him. He's mine. He's always been mine. I don't know why he's saying these things. And they had pictures of him as young as a baby being held by his siblings. And they're like, yeah, that's you. It's always been you. So it kind of just made me wonder, the fact that he still thinks he's Stephen Damman, even though the DNA has proven that he's not. So anyways, that was a story that came out. Unfortunately, it was upsetting for the family. Mr. Damman, Jerry said that, it hurt him. All of this happens and then it's for nothing. And it just brings up all those wounds and memories and heartache, and you hope and then you're let down. I'm sure they're willing to go through a million more letdowns if there's a chance that they'll find their son, but it wasn't as bad as some of the other ones. We had the Timothy Pitson where the guy just flat out lied and made up stuff. At least in this case, John Barnes seemed to have genuinely thought that he could be Steve Damman, but I'm kind of concerned about why he still thinks he is, because he's not. So, theories for this case. The number one theory came out that they thought that, maybe the mother did something. Again, as I've already talked about that, it didn't seem that anyone could come forward with any information that would corroborate that, other than a weird random video on YouTube that's since been deleted by someone saying they were a neighbor and saying that the mother was abusive. Nothing else has ever come about that, and I don't have any further information. I wish we had more knowledge from anyone else about that day, but that's all we have. But the number one theory that people have is that somebody took him to raise as their own. And under 3 years old, you could take a child and raise them as your own, and eventually they would have no memory. They're not going to have a memory that they would know what to do with, even if they did remember something that would make any difference, and you could totally raise this child as your own. So that is one possibility, and that is why it is so important to keep sharing his story, because if Stephen is out there, he's a 64-year-old man, he's going to have children, grandchildren possibly, and these DNA tests are going to come out, and hopefully it will come forward, and eventually he will be found if he did survive and was raised. The other theory, of course, is that, he came across bad, and because I don't think that he wandered off and just got hurt, because in 64 years he's never been found. His remains have never been found. His clothing's never been found. There were bodies of water that aren't too far away, but since I don't know exactly where the bakery was, I can't tell you how close he was to water. But from some Reddit threads, some people did some research, and there are bodies of water that he could have gotten into. Again, it's been 64 years. We normally would have found something by now, and a child's remains would be a huge deal. We would really figure out who they were. So that hasn't happened, and so the theory is that was he taken by, just a really bad person who completely hid him somewhere? And I can't believe in 64 years we don't have an answer to this. So that is the story that I have for you guys that took place on Halloween of 1955. All right, and that's what I have for you guys. I'm going to go start working on my next one. I think these are going to be a lot of kind of a little bit shorter videos than my normal long timeline drawn out videos. These are kind of smaller cases. I don't have as much information, but I'm going to put them together for you guys. So I'm going to start working on my next one after I edit this one. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much for being here. Make sure you hit subscribe, like, comment. I truly, truly appreciate you guys sharing my video. I saw my video shared by someone on Facebook. I love you. I liked it. I commented. I know I felt like a little kid, but I did because it's really cool. And I really appreciate it, guys. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for growing this channel. I really appreciate it. So I say this at the end of every one of my videos. Hug your babies and hug your loves. Life is precious. Enjoy every minute of every day. Do not take anything for granted. I love you. Happy Halloween. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.